So now, I hope you've reviewed so far what we have covered up until the muscles inserting into the upper lip and the muscles of the lips. Now we're going to talk about the muscles inserting into the lower lips. These are pretty easy. Okay, the muscles inserting to the lower lips are three: the depressor anguli oris, the depressor labii inferior, and then the mentalis. Okay. All right, the depressor anguli oris, also known as the triangularis. Okay, it's attached to the oblique line of the mandible, to the skin, and to the orbicularis ori inferior. Okay, so it pulls the angle. So if we talk about this, this is the muscle. Okay, so when it is down and it's the muscle, what do you think? The oral angle is going to come down and laterally. So it lowers the lower lip, okay, or depresses the lower lip. It's innervated by the mandibular branch. So far we talked about the buccal branch. So the new one right now is the mandibular branch. If you think about the position, it's attaching to the mandible, right? The mandible is the part that is right down here. So if you think about the position, so it is supplied by the mandibular branch of the seventh facial nerve. All right, so depressor anguli oris, so right here, okay, it inserts into the angle of the orbicularis ori inferioris. Okay, oris, and it pulls the angle down and laterally, it actually depresses the lower lip. The next one is the depressor labii inferior, which is right here. Okay, that's the depressor labii inferioris. It's all known as the quadratus labii inferior. It is also from the oblique line of the mandible into the lower lip and inserts into the skin, not to the angle. Okay, so it's not going to the angle, but it's kind of going down into the skin. It also lowers the lip inferiorly. It's active during a pout. You all know what a pout is. So it's active during a pout. It's innervated again by the mandibular branch of the seventh facial nerve. So, depressor anguli oris, levator labii inferioris. Okay, and both of these lowers the lip. The mentalis is closer to midline right here. That's your mentalis. Okay, it's the medial pair of the muscle from the mandible up to the orbicularis oris inferior. It elevates the lower lip, same as the OOI. So think about this. We talked about three muscles so far, about the muscles inserting into the lower lip. In the muscles inserting into the lower lip, two muscles depress lower lip, and they are depressor anguli oris and depressor labii inferioris. But one muscle, in addition to the OOI, is the mentalis, which both elevates lower lip. Okay, and it closes the lip. It wrinkles chin and pulls the lower lip out, and the again it's supplied by the mandibular branch of the seventh facial nerve. So if you do that, it's pulling for lip closure. All right, so we talked about the muscles around the lips, the orbicularis oris superior and orbicularis oris inferior. Then we talked about the muscles that insert into the upper lip. So we have the levator labii superioris aliquila nasi, the levator labii superioris, the zygomatic minor, the zygomatic major, and beneath all of this is the levator anguli oris. Okay. Then we talked about the muscles inserting into the lower lip, the depressor anguli oris, the depressor labii inferioris, the mentalis. The mentalis, in addition to the OOI, actually elevates the lower lip, while the other two depresses lower lip. The supply for all of these muscles so far is the seventh facial nerve, seventh cranial nerve, or the facial nerve. And there are some muscles that are supplied by the buccal branch and some muscles that are supplied by the mandibular branch. That is so far what we've discussed. The next thing we're going to talk about is the transverse muscles. Okay. The transverse muscles include the muscles that are on the side. There are two muscles, the risorius and the buccinator. Okay, the rhizorius is from the angle of the mandible to the angle of the mouth. Okay, so if I were to mark right here, okay, that's the rhizorius. Okay, the buccinator is this. That's the buccinator. Okay, so it's from the angle of the mandible to the angle of the mouth, movement of the angle laterally. Okay, so it retracts the lips around the corner. Again, it's supplied by the buccal branch of the 7th facial nerve. Right? The next muscle is the buccinator. The buccinator is deep to the rhizorius. It forms the muscular bulk of the cheek. Okay, if you feel the muscular bulk of the cheek, that's the buccinator muscle. It arises from the large areas of the mandible and maxilla to both the OOS and the OOI. So it's kind of a huge muscle. If you see again here, that's your buccinator muscle. Okay. It is a very important muscle also for the movement of food onto the grinding surfaces of the molar. So if you go and you chew, you're trying to move the food into the molars. So that is also buccinator's involvement. It also contributes to moving the angle laterally and helps to flatten the cheek. See? So, okay. So we have two transverse muscles. One retracts, which is the rhizorius. Okay. The other one is the buccinator, which is it forms the bulk of your cheek and it's deep into the rhizorius. It also helps in chewing and moving the food into the back to the molar. Okay, it contributes to moving the angle laterally and helps to flatten the cheeks. All right. The final muscle we're going to talk about is the platysma. This platysma is a flat, long, thin muscle, broad muscle that covers most of the lateral and anterior surface of the neck. If you remember the pectoralis major, it's the chest muscle, the respiratory muscle we talked about. It's a chest muscle, like a fan-shaped muscle right here. So it extends from the region around the pectoralis major and inserts into the oral angles. So this muscle that you see where it inserts into the oral angle, long, thin muscle, and then it goes and you have the fan-shaped, when you talk about it, a fan-shaped pectoralis major, and that becomes your platysma. Okay. It depresses the mandible. Okay, and remember we have to lower the mandible when we talked about how different sounds are produced. Sometimes when you have to go ah, you have to depress the mandible, and it helps doing that. It also helps when you're smiling broadly. And then, you know, all of that muscle. It's active when you're holding jaw against resistance. If you put your fist down there and go, that muscle that helps when you try to give resistance to your jaw, it kind of holds that. So that muscle is the platysma. Okay, so talk about three muscles that are involved in inserting into the lower lip: the depressor anguli oris, the depressor labii inferioris, the mentalis. The mentalis, in addition with the OOI, elevates the lower lip, but the other two depresses the lower lip. Then we have the transverse muscles, the rhizorius and the buccinator. Buccinator forms the bulk of the cheek. The rhizorius retracts your lips. The buccinator helps in the chewing movement and moving your food back to the molar. The platysma is this long, thin muscle that covers most of the anterior and lateral surface of your neck, extends from the pectoralis major, that is a fan-shaped muscle, and inserts into the angles of the mouth. Okay, and it depresses the mandible. So that's platysma right there. Okay, what I want you to do is, if you look at this, this is an empty figure. Label, print this out. Label the muscles. Print multiple copies of this, okay? And start labeling the muscles. What is this muscle? Zygomaticus major, zygomaticus minor, right? Levator labii superioris. Then you have the alicula nasi. Then the orbicularis oris superior, orbicularis inferior, the depressor anguli oris, the depressor labii inferioris, the mentalis, the platysma, okay? And then here is your levator anguli oris, okay? Where's your buccinator? So that is what I want you to do. Print this and label as many of these muscles, and you will be, how many muscles? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I want you to be able to name these, and this will be definitely a part of your final exam question, labeling these muscles of the face. Okay. You also need to know what these muscles are innervated by. Okay. So let's do a recap. We talked about the different cavities, the buccal cavity, the oral cavity, the pharyngeal cavity, which has the three parts, the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx, the nasopharynx being the most superior and the laryngopharynx being the most inferior. Then we talked about the nasal cavity. We talked about the velopharyngeal port. Remember, the velopharyngeal port is the port that is a communicative place between your nasal cavity and oral cavity. The velopharyngeal port has to be closed for oral sounds, for swallowing, and for blowing or puffing up your cheek. For the velopharyngeal port is open when you produce nasal sounds and breathing. Sorry, for a minute I was just like, yeah, I know there's one more thing. When you have to breathe, you have to keep your velopharyngeal port open. Then we talked about the articulators that are important. Then we talked about the articulators that are around the lips, the orbicularis oris superior, orbicularis oris inferior. Then we talked about the muscles that insert into the upper lip. We talked about the levator labii superioris alicula nasi, the levator labii superioris, the zygomaticus minor, the zygomaticus major. Deep into this is the levator anguli oris. Okay, all of these are supplied by the seventh facial nerve, mostly by the buccal branch. Then we had the muscles inserting into the lower lip. The muscles inserting the lower lip are the depressor anguli oris, the depressor labii inferioris, the mentalis. The mentalis with the orbicularis oris inferior actually elevates your lower lip, while the other two muscles of the lower lip depress your lower lip. Okay. Then you have the transverse muscles, the rhizorius and the buccinator forms the bulk of the cheek. And the platysma is this long, thin muscle that extends from the pectoralis major to the angle of the mouth. All right. And this is a picture that I want you to keep labeling as much as you can. Print multiple copies of these, label the muscles. This will be a definite question in your final exam. All right. For simplification purposes, based on the function, the muscles have been divided for you. The upper lip elevators are zygomaticus minor, levator labii superior, levator labii superior alicula nasi, zygomaticus major. It is also involved in the production of E, which means spreading your lips, and the levator anguli oris. The lower lip elevators are your mentalis, the orbicularis oris inferior. Upper lip depressor is the orbicularis oris superior. The lower lip depressors are the depressor anguli oris and the depressor labii inferioris or inferior. Okay, so remember again, make that table. Name of the muscle, whether it inserts into the upper lip or the lower lip, and then what its function is, whether it depresses the upper lip or depresses the lower lip or elevates the upper lip or elevates the lower lip, and also whether it retracts your lips, and what is the innervation. So mainly we talked about the buccal branch and the mandibular branch of the seventh facial nerve, seventh cranial nerve or the facial nerve. Oh, I missed this. The retractors are here. The levator anguli oris, depressor anguli oris, rhizorius, and buccinator. Okay. That sums up the muscles of the face. The next lecture, we're going to talk about the muscles of the tongue, the muscles of the pharynx that will help us with swallowing and different articulatory movements. And we're going to talk about the cranial nerves. There are 12 cranial nerves. We're going to talk about an overview of the 12 cranial nerves.